Hey YouTube, it's January the 17th, 2023, a Tuesday, and welcome to the Bubba Continuum. I'm just here celebrating the second coming of Jesus Christ, celebrating the rapture in advance with a nice ale that I brewed. Here's to your health. That just couldn't be much better. That really came out good. I am so happy. These glasses I really love. They came the other day. They're from Amazon, and they come from a company called Glaver, which I'm sure is Chinese. It's Glaver. They always come up with these names that sound European or American. Anyway, these are supposedly 19.25 ounce glasses, and they're really 18 ounce glasses, but they're great. They have a nice shape, and they're versatile. They can be used for a lot of different beers because they're not too narrow. I'm so happy with that. So, why would a Christian talk about beer? It's something I've been talking about a lot lately because I felt at the very end of December that God started telling me you should make beer again. I used to make beer in the past, and I thought, well, Christians shouldn't drink, or at least they shouldn't drink very much. And I got away from it, and then I felt like God was telling me to do it again. And I know people will think this guy's nuts. God would never tell you to do something like that. And so I have a testimony from yesterday that may be related to this. Maybe it'll make you wonder. So to set up the testimony, I have to tell you, this testimony involves a lot of things from my past. And if I tell you the testimony and I don't tell you about the things in my past, then you're going to have no idea what's going on. So I will try to give you a little setup. So first of all, in 1984, I went to Israel and I lived on a kibbutz for 4 months. I was going to stay for a year, but it got very tiresome because I was a volunteer, and the volunteer population, they have a high turnover because people just stay there for a short time. So you make friends and then they leave, and you make a new friend and that friend leaves, and after a while it gets tiresome because you miss the people that have gone, and you're kind of reluctant to make friends with the new ones because you know they're going to take off in a month. But anyhow, I went to Israel. And an interesting thing about that is that I talked about this in another video. The trip that I was on, I had this dumb idea that I was going to write a book about beer, that I was going to travel all over the place in Europe and drink beer in every city and just get really drunk and write about their beer and what was wrong with American beer and how we needed to learn from them. It was a dumb idea. But I had this idea that Israel would be my starting point, but not because Israel's a good place to drink in, but because I had a friend there on a kibbutz, this guy, a friend of mine from college, and he had just become unbelievably, extremely Jewish while he was in college. First he wouldn't eat cheeseburgers. The next thing you know, he ended up in Israel. He was on a kibbutz himself, and then he found out that wasn't Jewish enough, so he went to yeshiva in Jerusalem, and I went to see him. Sort of, I surprised him. He was amazed. I showed up on Purim and walked into the synagogue, and he had no idea I was coming. So I went to Israel and stayed there for 4 months, and it's kind of beer related now that I think about it. Well, while I was there, I went all over the place. I was in a place called Geva, which it's known for irrigation products. They had a machine shop. I wish I had worked in the machine shop. They had a big CNC plant, and I could have learned about machining, which I developed an interest in later. But instead, I worked in the grapefruit for most of the time. And you picked like a ton of grapefruit, and after that, they let you go home. So we could get out in like 3 hours. If you were fast, you could pick grapefruit in 2.5, 3 hours, a ton, and then you go sit by the pool. It was a rich kibbutz, and they had this beautiful Olympic pool. It was funny because Israeli fighter pilots would shoot over the pool, and supposedly so they could look at the girls. Anyway, that's what I did in 1984. I traveled all over, and Geva was near a city called Afula, which I think is in the West Bank now or something. I don't know. It was basically an Arab town. And I remember Afula because I used to go there. They have wonderful falafel. I don't want to get into the subject of how great falafel is in Israel, but it's a totally different experience from what it is here. And the food on the kibbutz was not that great. I mean, it was wholesome and all that and very good for you. But in Israel, I mean, at that time, I don't know what it's like now. The Jews were not the people you went to for food. You went to the Arabs because the Jews didn't cook very well. So Afula was a place I used to go to on the weekends, and I'd have a falafel and a real Coke, which I couldn't get on the kibbutz. It was great. And I was familiar with a lot of places around me. Like there's a city down the road from us called Bet Shan, and Bet Shan is where Saul's body was nailed to the wall. And across the street from me was Mount Gilboa, where Saul died, and underneath Mount Gilboa there was the Spring of Gideon. I used to go with my friends and swim in the Spring of Gideon. It's a public park. There were other kibbutzes near us, Bet Alpha and Bet Hashida. I think Bet Hashida was the one that was famous for pickles. If it wasn't Bet Hashida, it was Bet Alpha. So I went to Jerusalem. I went to Jerusalem a lot. I slept on Masada, which was illegal. I thought they were going to, in the middle of the night, a helicopter came flying up over the place where I had hidden myself, and I thought, well, I'm going to prison. But it turned out all the tourists slept on Masada, and the signs didn't mean anything. So what else did I do there? I went to Mount Hermon, where I was taken on a tour with the other kibbutz volunteers. They put us on a bus, and I went to see Mount Hermon up in the north. It was something you should read about. It has tremendous supernatural significance. There was a spring at the bottom where pagans used to throw their sacrifices, and the spring bubbled up. Now it's kind of calm, but back in the day, it used to be a very vigorous spring, and it fed the Jordan. So they were polluting the entire watershed, the entire Jordan River and the Sea of Galilee, and then the water went into the Jordan, into the Sea of Galilee, and the Jordan continues out of the Sea of Galilee, so it goes south to the Dead Sea. So there's very great symbolic significance to that. And Mount Hermon is supposedly where the Book of Enoch says that it's where the fallen angels came down so they could have sex with women. And the name of the mountain means Lord of the Curse. Baal means Lord, and Hermon means curse. And the idea is that these angels got together and they bound themselves together with a curse, saying, may any one of us who does not stand with the others before God, when we get in trouble, may that one be cursed. So that's actually the name of the place. So this thing from Enoch, it must have some truth to it. What else can I tell you? I've been to Egypt. I've been on a Nile cruise with my wife, and we saw every single temple, that was available pretty much. We went to all the pyramids except for there's a complex at a place called Saqqara, and we didn't go in there because my wife went into the Great Pyramid of Giza. There's this hole you go into. It's a tomb, this tiny little shaft that's very long, and you go like a couple of 100 feet, I guess, into this place, and then you can be in the little chamber where the pharaoh's body used to be. And she felt that spirits were attacking her while she was in there, and she got claustrophobic and had to leave. And we were supposed to go to Saqqara after that, and she said, "I'm done." It's really unfortunate for me because we were going to go on a camel ride outside the Great Pyramids right after that, and I had no interest in that. She wanted to do it, and then, man, camels stink. So I ended up riding a camel by myself, and I was not happy. They really smell. There's no rain there, and you know what camels are going to do? They're like every other animal. They got to relieve themselves. So the stench was beyond belief. I don't know. I'll just get into the story, I guess. I won't get into the story yet. So about some other things. My hands have been kind of cracking lately. All my life I've been able to do whatever I wanted with my hands. I could put whatever chemicals on them I wanted. I always thought lotion was for people of questionable masculinity, and never had any trouble with my skin. But recently my skin has started to crack, and when I wash with hot water and the hot water gets into the cracks, it's painful. And so I was thinking, geez, am I getting old? Is my skin changing? Or is it because I've been doing all this home brewing lately and I'm constantly cleaning things? And I started thinking to myself, maybe I should actually try some lotion. Maybe that's the problem. So I know that doesn't sound significant, but it is. And what else is going on? I needed to get tanks, gas bottles, because when you make beer, you have to have something to push it out of the kegs. Wow. Thank you. So, the town I live near, they have a place called Air Gas that sells welding gas, and they also sell some beverage gas. But there's two kinds of beverage gas. There's CO2, and then there's a mix of CO2 and nitrogen called beer gas or beer mix. And the place near me won't sell beer gas in small tanks. They will only sell it in big tanks. Well, I just recently bought a freezer that I'm converting to hold kegs. And I knew that it would hold 2 small tanks, but I checked the measurements, and it won't hold. I want to have 5 kegs and 2 tanks. And it turns out there's no way to get a big tank in there. So I found out that there was a place in Orlando, near Orlando, where I could get any size tank I wanted filled because they were very friendly to brewers. So that was kind of exciting to me. And the way I found out about that place was through a homebrew supply place in Orlando. There's no homebrew supply places anywhere near me. And I got on the internet when I started wanting to brew again, and I wanted to buy all these ingredients, and I found that the prices had gone up to it's like $2.65 a pound at a lot of these places for a pound of grain, which is a lot of money for something that ought to be very cheap. And then if you have to get the grain crushed before you can use it. You can't brew unless it's crushed, and they'll charge you extra money for that. And this place, and the other thing they won't do, they won't give you small amounts. If you want 1 pound and 4 ounces, forget it. You have to buy 3 pounds or 2 pounds. You have to buy even numbers, like 1, 3, 5, and I think 8 or something. And it's a great way to get you to waste your money because they say, oh, we have free shipping, but then you end up spending $40 on something that should cost $20. So the free shipping is not free. So this place near Orlando, they would do anything I wanted. They give you little small amounts of hops. They mix the grain for you and crush it. They don't charge you anything extra. They put it in these nice long bags. They make it easy to dump into the kettle and so forth. There's a lot of reasons why this is a great homebrew place. I'll just tell you the name of Hart's Homebrew. If you're doing anything related to any kind of brewing, wine, mead, beer, and you're anywhere near Orlando, that's the place to go. So I had a good experience with these people. When I found out about them, I went to their website and I thought I'll order online, and then I thought, they're not that far from me. I'll just order and go down and get the grain. I went down and had a good experience with them, and I realized that these are good people to do business with. So when I had problems with finding gas, I thought, well, I'm going to have to go down to this place from now on. I've decided from now on I'm probably going to, what I'm going to do when I want grain and stuff, I'm going to go to this place instead of ordering online and get stuff in person, and I'll buy so much of it that I don't have to worry about the price of the tolls and the gas eating into it. So I said to myself, I know I'm going to be going down there again anyway, but maybe they know a place near them, and sure enough, they knew this place that will fill bottles and do whatever you want. So I guess that's most of the background. And on top of that, I wanted global entry. Global entry is a program that will allow American citizens, and I think green card holders, to skip the big customs lines when they come back to the United States, when they travel overseas. So I really wanted to get that because I made a lot of international flights over the last year or two, and I'm really tired of standing in line and for an hour and a half. I mean, I know it sounds crazy that I want to drive someplace that's over an hour away and then drive an hour back to avoid waiting in line, but it's a lot nicer to sit in your car once, than it is to stand in line many, many times. So I wanted to get this, and I applied for it. I applied for it in November. And the appointments are way out in the future because you know how the government is. The government's crazy. So I had to take an appointment on January the 6th, which was just unbelievable, but still, that's what I had to do. And I missed the appointment. You would think I would never miss an appointment. It's so hard to get. It's so important. But somehow I did. I didn't write it down, and they don't remind you because they're the government. Well, the other day I realized I had missed my appointment, and I thought, well, I'll see what I can do by getting another one. And the appointments they had were so far in the future, May and so forth like that. And I thought, man, this is terrible. And I looked around the web thinking there might be some solution, and I found this website that scans the appointments, the schedule. And if you pay them $29, for 1 month, they'll scan the appointment schedule and tell you when an appointment comes up, like a cancellation. Or sometimes the government will just decide to create 100 more appointments, and they won't tell anybody because they're the government. So this company finds out about these things, and they'll send you an email or a text, whatever you want, and you have to run to the computer and try to get that appointment if it's better than one you have. A lot of people are doing this, apparently, so you have to rush. And I found out that if you're not sitting in front of the computer within a few minutes, you pretty much kiss a good appointment goodbye. So I started changing my appointment. And first I got sometime late in March or something like that, and I thought, that's all right, I can stand that. I probably won't be going anywhere before March. And then gradually, as I kept changing appointments, the time kept creeping closer and closer, and I finally got the middle of February. And then one day I got this text, and it said, tomorrow, this was Sunday, tomorrow there's an appointment, and it's in Sanford, which is close to Orlando. And I thought, man, that is too good to be true. And I ran to the computer, and I thought, somebody's going to take this appointment. And believe it or not, I got the appointment. So it's Sunday night, and I'm sitting around and I'm thinking, I've got this unbelievable appointment now, this wonderful appointment. It's in the afternoon, so I don't have to get up at 3 in the morning and miss prayer. It's going to be convenient. And I want to go to this gas place, and I want to go to this homebrew place. So what a great thing this is. Now I can take my tanks down there, my old tanks that have to be recertified and all that, and get all that over with, and exchange them for new tanks, and I can get all this brewing stuff. And it's just going to be fantastic. Except that I hated the idea of going to this interview because I hate the government. I just can't stand the government. I'm not. I don't know. I guess you could say every real Christian is kind of a conspiracy nut because we believe we know that the government is against us. That's not a joke. That's true. We know the world is against us, and we believe in things like the rapture and so forth. But some of us are some conservatives and some Christians. They're not always the same thing. Are a little too kooky. There's this flat Earth stuff going on now, and there are people who actually think civil war is a good thing and that we're going to win, So I'm not one of those people. But I hate the government like every reasonable person. I hate being involved with them. I know it belongs to Satan, and it just seems like I never fit in. When I deal with the government, there's always some kind of problem. Like when I fill out forms, I always have to say something that isn't true because they'll ask a question that has no answer. And I look at it and I'll think either I can sign this form and then say at the bottom, under penalty of perjury, I sign this form, or I'm never going to get this, and whatever it is, a passport or whatever it is, I'm just never going to get it because this form makes no sense. Like they'll say on your last 3 ski trips, what color jacket did you wear? And you're like, I don't ski. Whatever it is, I'm just trying to make up an example of an absurd question that you can't answer because there is no answer. So you have to answer a question that doesn't have an answer, and then you have to swear that the answer is true. Or they'll have a form and they'll say, tell us this or that, and in order to tell them that you need 4 lines, and the form is half a line long. It's things like that. I can't explain it, but I'm just saying I never interact well with the government, and I want nothing to do with them, and I'm paranoid about them. I remember thinking I had this feeling like I'm going to go to this thing and they're gonna make up some dirt on me, and they're going to find out about something in my past that I can't remember, and I'm going to be in trouble. Which was totally unreasonable because there's really not. I don't think there's much of anything they could pin on me. I'm a pretty boring guy. So I was grumbling the whole way down there. Well, I wouldn't say that. I would say I resented having to go to I resented having to deal with the government, but I was glad to get the opportunity to get global entry, and I was glad to get the opportunity to do these beer-related things. But I was not happy about it. For one thing they said you have to wear a mask, a face diaper, as I've been calling them for a long time, and I had to go dig up a mask. And I thought, man, haven't these people learned that these things don't work and that the epidemic's basically gone in Florida? So there's just a lot of reasons that I was annoyed. Well, so I go to the gas place because I planned this route that was the most efficient. And I went to the gas place first, and they couldn't have been nicer. They handled everything, gave me some nice new tanks, got it over with, reasonable price. And I went to the homebrew place, and they were fantastic. And I asked them things, and they gave me help. And I got all my stuff there. And then I had to grit my teeth and then bite the bullet and go to the Sanford airport for global entry, my interview. And I had a hard time parking because the signs didn't make any sense. One of the garages was closed, and I thought, man, I've got like 10 more minutes to get in this place and sit down. If I don't find a place to park, I got to go home and wait for another 2 months for an appointment, and then I got to come back down here. So I finally got into the place. And no one was wearing masks. Well, there's always a couple of nuts wearing masks. But I finally got into the airport and was outside the customs thing. That's where they work. It's DHS and customs. Funny, customs, all they used to care about was whether you brought in Cuban cigars, stuff like that. Whether you bought a watch that was expensive and didn't pay duty. That was the kind of thing they were excited about. And now and it's like an intelligence agency now because it's combined sort of with DHS, I guess. So anyway, they had this little tiny room. That's all they had, was a little tiny room with a door, and you're not allowed to knock on the door, and if you call them, you get a recording. So I sat there with the other people, and this guy comes out, and he starts asking, apparently someone is canceled. He comes out early, so I only had to wait a couple of minutes, and he starts saying, do you have an appointment? What time is your appointment? And he turned to the guy next to me, and the guy said, I'm supposed to be here at 2:30, and I thought he was going to take him before me, and I was about to jump up. And then he asked me, and I said, yeah, 2:15, I'm here. I'm here for 2:15. So he ushered me in, held the door for me, and I go and sit in his office, and we start talking. Well, while we're talking, I'm wearing a hat that says Ephesus on it. Ephesus is a place in Turkey, and if you're a Christian, you know what Ephesus is about. I mean, the book of Ephesians is named after the people of Ephesus, and Paul went there and he got beaten, and there was a big church there. Turkey used to be apparently the center of the Christian world for a while because that's where the 7 churches were. The 7 churches of the Revelation that Jesus addressed. So, wow. Oh, that is just amazing. Ephesus. So, I was wearing this Ephesus hat, and he started asking me if I'd been to Ephesus because he knew you have to tell him where you've been, And I said I've been to Turkey and Ireland and Singapore and Egypt. And he starts asking me what I thought of Ephesus, and I thought I'm going to have to explain to him why a person would go to Ephesus because who would go there? If you're not a Christian, you don't understand. I said, well, it was really interesting. It was neat. And I said, my wife and I wanted to go there because we're both Christians. And he goes, oh, well, I'm a Christian too. God bless you. And that stunned me. That was like going into Nebuchadnezzar's palace and having lunch with Daniel. So we start talking, and we start talking about Christianity and all these things that we've done. And for some reason, he brings up Israel, and he says, I worked in Israel for 6 months. We're talking about Egypt, I think, and he was talking about how he went there from Israel or something. And he says, I was in Israel for 6 months, and I worked on a kibbutz, and it was like he was going to explain to me what a kibbutz was. Well, I worked for 4 months on a kibbutz. So instead of saying, what's a kibbutz? I was like, which one? I thought it might be one that I knew of. And he said it was a place called, I believe it was near David. David is David. That's how you really pronounce David. And he started saying that they grew bananas and some other thing. And he started telling me about he and his cousin or his brother or something went to Egypt. And they had backpacks and they had no money. And they went to the Nile and they went to these various temples. He started naming the temples they went to. I was like, yeah, I've been there. I've been to those temples. I was just there, a year before last. And what he did with his friend or his cousin or whoever it was, there's these little, cheap sailboats that the locals have there that are not. These are just things they've always had, for fishing and whatever. And apparently they rented this thing with a few other people, and they cruised down the Nile on that, which is not really luxurious. And I was telling him, when you're older, you need to forget about that. You need to get on a cruise ship like I do, because they have these neat cruise ships. When you say cruise ship, it sounds like a big fancy thing. These things aren't that fancy. I'd say they're like maybe 200 feet long, but they're really pleasant. They're really pleasant. The food's good, and it's air conditioned, and the bathroom and all that is nice, and the beds are nice, and the view is pleasant. So I was talking to him about that, and we're talking about the different temples we went to. We're talking about going to Abu Simbel. He was saying what an amazing place it was, and I was complaining to him about the ride because it's like 3 hours each way. We talked about. I told him that he told me he had gone to the Sinai Peninsula, and I told him why I didn't go there because I didn't go when I was in Israel when I was young. A Finnish girl on the kibbutz, a volunteer friend of mine, offered to pay my way to go to Egypt, and I didn't want to do it. And the reason she offered to pay my way was that Middle Eastern men were just this far from rapists. I mean, they're just unbelievable. And the Israelis are the worst. They make Italians look gay. They're just beyond belief how fascinated, obsessed with sex they are. And you got to be careful around them if you're a woman because you don't get handled. So she was going to pay my way to Egypt because she wanted to go to Egypt. And he started saying, "Oh yeah, I know, I can't believe it." And then we started talking about how amazing it was that the women in Israel were so attractive. Because I'm not knocking the Jewish people. I'm a big friend of the Jews, but elsewhere in the world, Jewish women do not have a reputation for being extremely attractive. But if you go to Israel, it's really strange how attractive they are. I'm trying to think what else we talked about. He started telling me about how he'd been to Mount Hermon, and he says, there's this place at the base of it called the Banyas, and he was going to explain it to me. I was like, yeah, I know about the Banyas, and I know all about the supernatural significance of the Banyas and all this stuff. And then he started talking about tours that we might want to take if my wife and I go. And he said there's a company called Pilgrim Tours, and it belongs to a guy who does something called Expedition Israel. And I thought, I've seen that on YouTube. I've seen that guy's channel. I started talking to him about that. And we talked about how you lose weight when you work on a kibbutz, and I don't know, just all these things we talked about. We took way too long. It's my fault for distracting him. If DHS is watching this, Please don't get mad at me. It was my fault. We just couldn't stop talking about this stuff. And I just knew that I had met one of my brothers. I knew that this guy was one of us. And I just couldn't believe the entire experience. So time comes to take my fingerprints, which is idiotic because I've been fingerprinted so many times. I mean, law, real estate, concealed weapons permit, they fingerprint you. The government can't be bothered, because it's the government, to keep a database. I guess this is a good thing if you're trying to get away with something. But they can't be bothered to put all the fingerprints in one computer. So I had to get fingerprinted. And they had this machine. They have a machine now that you put your fingers on. And he couldn't read my fingers on the machine. And he said, you should put some hand sanitizer on. Sometimes that helps. So they had some on the table, and I tried that, and that didn't help. And he says, well, maybe hand lotion will help. Well, I've got this problem right now where my hands are kind of cracked and dry. So I thought maybe that was it. I was telling him, I've been home brewing because I got back to it, and maybe all this washing and cleaning has been causing trouble. He goes, oh, yeah, cool. So he goes out of the room, comes back with hand lotion. I put this hand lotion on, and after that, the machine can read my fingerprints. So we go through all that, and we get me done. He says, you're going to be approved, and you'll get your card in a few days and all that. And I shook his hand on the way out, and he says, God bless you again. And so it just freaked me out. So I get in the car, and I turn on Waze, which is a navigation app. Now, Waze, when you go someplace, it says something like, are you ready to go? Because I sure am, or some stupid thing like that. It's a lady's voice, pretending that it's interested when it's really an inanimate object. And it always says things like, if you're ready, let's go. And this time I turned it on, and I pushed home. I saved my home location in it. And it said, have a blessed drive. And it actually scared me. Because, this thing, I don't know who wrote the Waze application. I'm pretty sure it wasn't a Christian. I mean, what Christian goes into that kind of thing? Maybe it is. I don't know. Have a blessed day. And I was actually scared for a minute that it would say that to me. So I'm just freaked out all the way home. And I get out. On the way home, I realize my hands don't hurt, because this guy has given me hand lotion. This thing, I was thinking on the way to this place, I should stop someplace and get some hand lotion and see if it works. And I go to the global entry interview, and the guy gives me hand lotion, and my hands stop hurting. So now I know I have to get hand lotion. Actually, what I've been using is case lube. Case lube is something used to lubricate shells, cartridge casings, bullets without bullets, brass. You lubricate it when you make new ammunition. And I have this stuff which is a combination of 100% or 99% pure alcohol. It's called heat. It's some kind of thing for cars. It takes water out of gas, I think. I live in the South. I don't have to worry about it. But anyway, you can buy this stuff, and it's almost all alcohol. And you mix it with lanolin, which is sheep grease, the grease that comes from their wool. And it's good. Lanolin is great for moisturizing. So you mix these things together, and you can use them to lubricate cases, and it makes it easier to make the cases in your tools, your ammunition press. I'm trying to describe this in a way that people who have no idea what an ammunition press is will understand it. So I actually have lanolin sitting around. So my beer problems were solved. My global entry problem was solved. My hands got fixed up. My telephone told me for the first time in my life to have a blessed drive. I mean, one of the weirdest things that has ever happened to me. And beer was a big part of this. So, I don't know, if you were one of the two people who watches my videos and you heard me talking about beer and you're thinking, this guy's going to hell. He talks about Benny Hinn. He says mean things about Benny Hinn. And he doesn't believe in the prosperity gospel. And we all know that works. And now he's drinking beer. He's making beer. This guy's going to hell. God's not in that. God never told you to make beer. Shame on you. and look what happened to me on this day when I was basically running errands to get beer, to get things to make beer. It was one of the most amazing days of my life. It reminded me of what it was like when I was in Israel, because everywhere I went in Israel, I was a terrible Christian back then, barely a Christian at all. But I felt like God was leading me around the whole time there, and I just didn't have to worry. He was always going to pick me up and take care of me. I went over there with like $750 in traveler's checks and a round-trip ticket, and that was it. And I thought that was okay. I thought that was, like now, I won't walk across the yard without my cell phone and a pistol. It's funny how you change and how life changes. Anyway, it reminded me of that, because when I was in Israel, I kept having all kinds of weird supernatural experiences. I had a vision I met I met two people who were demon possessed. I had all these experiences when I when I toured Mount Hermon in the northern part of Israel, and just weird stuff happened all the time. God just carried me around, just moved me around. You know, like what you think is not important, you just make your little noises and say what you're going to say, but I'm going to put you here and put you there, and things are going to be all right. And yesterday reminded me of that so much, and this was a big part of it. So I don't know. You have to ask yourself: is it impossible that God would tell someone to make beer? Gosh, that's fantastic! Wow. If you're not a person who drinks good beer, and you don't understand why I like that so much, but that is, if you appreciate a good beer, if you really understand it, you would love this stuff. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can say. This was such an important thing that I had to write about it on the internet, and I had to come and do this video. That's how big a deal it was to me. You have to excuse the bird. He's upset because I'm not paying attention to him. Yes, Mark. I don't know. I guess that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this and you weren't too bored. And I hope things like this happen to you, because when things like this happen to you, it reminds you that God is there. It reminds you that He is real. That if you've been worried, if you've been concerned that maybe you've been fooled and He doesn't exist, maybe you somehow managed to delude yourself. It's not true. He's there. He's there. He knows who you are, and He plans every step of your life. He's there. I'm trying to think, is there anything else I should say? I feel like there is, but I don't know what it is. I'll remember it right after I turn the camera off. I was going to say, I know this, I was going to say that whenever I'm in the car, one of the things I like about driving is whenever I drive, I used to listen to, I used to have this huge music collection, and I had this magnificent stereo, these really expensive, enormous speakers. I was kind of an audiophile. I wouldn't say I was a true audiophile because I hadn't lost my mind, but I was pretty bad. And now when I go in the car, I listen to the Bible. I listen to people acting out the Bible, and I pray in tongues most of the time. And I pray for people. I try to see if there's anyone I can intercede for. I try to intercede for people that I dislike intensely, because I know God likes that. And I pray for Him to change my heart about them. And I think that was part of the reason why things went so well. Oh, and one of the things I've learned is that it's important to call God holy. If you look at the Bible, there's at least two places. In Isaiah, there's a place, and in Revelation, there's a place. And it talks about how the creatures around the throne sit around saying, "Holy, holy, holy," all the time to God. You're holy, you're holy, you're holy. And it sounds silly. It sounds kind of simple-minded, like something. We have this pride we are proud of our minds, and we think we have to understand everything that we do. We want God to explain everything for us, and if God's not going to be an intellectual and lay everything out, and we don't understand what He's doing, and we disagree with something He's doing, then we're not going to worship God, and we'll teach Him a lesson, until you die, and He's about to pitch you into hell. Then your attitude's a lot different. So when you call God holy, I used to think what's the purpose of that? Why would you call God holy? But there's power in it. There's power in it. So it's the highest compliment you can pay anyone to say you're holy, you're holy, you're holy. And when you repeat things you'll see this in the Bible. When something is repeated 3 times, it means it's something really important. If it's repeated twice, it's important. The more times it's repeated, the more significance it has. So on the way these days, when I pray to God, I say, "You're holy, you're holy." I even tell the Holy Spirit He's holy. I call Him Holy, Holy Spirit. Maybe I said this in the last video I put up. I don't know. And I feel like that's part of how life is changing and improving. So you should try that. Give it a shot. You have nothing to lose. Next time you pray, spend a few minutes telling God He's holy. See what happens. See if I'm right. So I guess that's it. I wish I could give each of you one of these, except then I would have less, so maybe I don't. But actually, I wouldn't have much less because maybe no one will watch this video. So I hope this is a blessing to you, and you'll remember that He's there. Because He really is there. He knows who you are, and He has planned everything. And if you will just get yourself into the flow, and stop leaning to your own understanding and trying to figure everything out and trying to work hard, if you speak in tongues and you listen and you get revelation, the flow is going to start and you're going to be in it and you're going to surf your way to heaven. So that's it.